Let me ask you something. How many times have you walked away from a confrontation, heart hammering, face hot, mind racing, and thought to yourself, why did I say that? Why did I react like that? Why did I let them get to me? How many times has one person, one single, small, miserable person, been able to wreck your entire day, your entire week? How many nights have you lost to replaying an argument in your head, rehearsing the perfect comeback you should have said 3 days ago? If you're being honest, too many times to count. And here's what makes it even worse. The people who provoke you, half of them aren't even that powerful. They're not smarter than you. They're not better than you. They're often deeply unhappy people who have figured out, consciously or not, that they can reach into your chest, grab hold of something, and watch you come completely unraveled. And you let them. Every single time. That stops today. Because what I'm about to give you are 12 battle-tested, philosophy-forged rules drawn from over 2,000 years of Stoic wisdom that will make you so mentally unshakable that the people who used to rattle you will start to seem like nothing more than background noise. Not slightly calmer. Not a little more patient. I mean, genuinely, structurally unshakable. The kind of person who can stand in the middle of a storm and feel nothing but stillness. That is what Stoicism built. That is what it can build in you. And we are starting right now. Rule 1. They're not attacking you. They're exposing themselves. I want you to burn this into your mind, because it will change everything about how you receive hostility from other people. When someone attacks you, verbally, socially, professionally, they are not making a statement about who you are. They are making a statement about who they are. In that moment of aggression, they have just handed you the most honest piece of self-disclosure you will ever get from them. Let me make this concrete. Think about the most successful, most genuinely fulfilled people you know or have ever heard of. The people who are deeply secure, whose relationships are rich, whose lives feel meaningful. Now ask yourself, do those people spend their time tearing others down? Do they invest energy in crafting insults, starting drama, trying to publicly embarrass someone who irritates them? No, because they have no reason to. People who are full don't need to drain others. Epictetus, a man who was literally owned by another human being, a man who had nothing that the world would recognize as power, understood this better than almost any emperor or general of his time. He wrote that those who insult others are, in fact, exposing their own poverty of character. The insult is not a weapon aimed outward. It is a wound bleeding outward. Think about the last person who went out of their way to attack you. Now think, genuinely think, about what was probably happening in their life. What frustrations were they carrying? What self-perception were they struggling with? What did they need to prove, and why did they need to prove it? This is not about excusing them. This is about seeing them clearly. Because the moment you see an attack for what it really is, a symptom, not a verdict, it loses its sting entirely. You cannot be wounded by someone else's bleeding. An insult is not information about you. It is a confession about them. Receive it accordingly. Rule 2. Stop accepting packages that aren't addressed to you. Here is one of the most useful mental models I have ever come across, and it comes directly from Stoic thought. Imagine someone shows up at your front door and tries to hand you a package. You didn't order it. It wasn't sent by anyone you know. The label on it says something ugly, failure, worthless, pathetic. They're pushing it toward you, insisting you take it. You have one job. Don't take the package. This is what words are. They are packages. And you, every single time, have the choice of whether to accept delivery or not. The Stoics were precise about this. Epictetus in the Enchiridion was relentless on one point. The only things that are truly yours are your opinions, your motivations, your desires, your responses. Everything else, including what other people think and say about you, is external. It is outside the fence of your control. And investing your peace, your self-concept, or your emotional stability in something outside that fence is, he said plainly, madness. When someone calls you a failure, that word carries exactly as much weight as you decide to put in it. 0 is a perfectly valid amount. Less than 0 if you choose to let it sharpen your focus instead of wound your pride is even better. Here is the truth about verbal attacks that nobody wants to say out loud. They are noise. Social noise, designed to be picked up by your insecurity frequency and amplified into something that feels like truth. But noise is only noise. It has no inherent meaning. The meaning is assembled entirely inside your own head. Stop assembling it. Stop picking up the frequency. Let the noise pass through you like wind through an open window, arriving from one side, exiting the other, leaving absolutely nothing behind. You are not obligated to internalize what was never true about you in the first place. Rule 3. The moment you react, you lose. I'm not going to soften this one. When you react impulsively to someone who is trying to provoke you, you lose. Full stop. Not maybe, not partially. You lose completely, because in that moment of uncontrolled reaction, you have proven, to them, to everyone watching, and most devastatingly to yourself, that they have power over you. That is the only thing provocateurs want. Not to be right, not to win an argument, not even to hurt you specifically. They want to know that they can move you, that they can reach across the space between you, press a button, and watch you dance. And every time you react without control, you confirm it. You validate their tactic. You reward the behavior. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man on earth for almost 2 decades, a man who commanded armies and governed millions, came back to this truth so often in his private journals that it reads almost like a mantra. Guard the hegemonicon. Guard the ruling mind. Let nothing outside breach the interior. He wasn't writing this as a reminder for his subjects. He was writing it for himself, because he knew, better than anyone, that the greatest threats to his power were not external enemies. They were his own unconsidered, reactive impulses. The anger that flares before wisdom can intervene. The pride that wants to retaliate before judgment can assess. Here is what most people miss about provocation. The goal is not to make you angry. Anger is just the mechanism. The actual goal is to transfer control, to take the steering wheel of your behavior out of your hands and put it into theirs. And a reactive response, regardless of how justified it feels, completes that transfer perfectly. The Stoic response is not passivity. It is sovereignty. It is the choice, made deliberately, in real time, to remain the author of your own behavior, to say with every calm breath, I decide what happens next, not you. That is not weakness wearing a mask of strength. That is the purest, most uncompromising expression of strength that exists. Rule 4. 3 seconds stands between you and a mistake. Let's talk about what is actually happening in your brain during a provocation, because understanding the machinery makes it far easier to override it. The second your brain registers a social threat, an insult, a dismissal, a humiliation, Your amygdala detonates. Adrenaline floods the bloodstream. Cortisol follows. Your heart rate surges. Your vision narrows. And your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for judgment, perspective, and language, essentially goes dark. You are now running on primitive hardware. Hardware designed for physical predators, not passive-aggressive co-workers. Hardware that cannot distinguish between a saber-toothed tiger and a sarcastic comment in a team meeting. And from that hijacked state, you open your mouth. And what comes out is not your best self. It is your most reactive, least considered, most regrettable self. The antidote, simple, powerful, and proven, is the deliberate 3-second pause. Not a hesitation born of fear, a pause born of absolute command. Before any word leaves your mouth in response to a provocation, you impose a mandatory 3-second gap. You do not fill it with internal preparation. You breathe. You allow the neurochemical surge to begin its retreat. You give your frontal lobe time to come back online. Seneca wrote in his essay, On Anger, one of the most practical texts on emotional mastery ever written, that the simple act of delay is the most effective weapon against reactive behavior. Not repression. Delay. The anger can exist, the irritation can exist, but it does not get to act until you have given reason a chance to weigh in. 3 seconds becomes 5. 5 becomes 10. 10 becomes the space in which wisdom lives. Train this in the small moments. The traffic cutoff, the thoughtless text, the minor dig at dinner, so it is automatic in the large ones. Because the large ones will come. And when they do, those 3 seconds will be the difference between a response you own and a reaction you regret. Rule 5. Every provocation is a ring. Step in, ready to win. Most people experience provocation as something that happens to them. A sudden ambush they weren't prepared for, an unfair attack they didn't deserve, a disruption to the day they had planned. Flip it, completely. What if every provocation was not an ambush, but an arena? What if instead of a surprise attack, it was actually an invitation? A test, specifically designed to measure the quality of the character you've been building. Because that is exactly what it is. Epictetus used the gymnasium constantly as his central metaphor for Stoic living. You go to the gym to be challenged. The weights are supposed to be heavy. The resistance is supposed to be real. The discomfort is the mechanism of growth. Nobody walks into a gym and complains that the barbells are too difficult. The difficulty is the point. The same is true of every difficult person you encounter. They are not impediments to your development. They are the curriculum. Every time someone tries to embarrass you publicly, that is a live test of your composure. Every time someone dismisses your work or mocks your ambition, that is a live test of your self-belief. Every time someone escalates, provocates, tries to bait you into descending to their level, that is a live test of your sovereignty. And here is what makes this reframe genuinely powerful. It converts the emotional charge of the moment from threat to opportunity. Instead of your nervous system reading danger, it reads challenge. And human beings respond to challenges completely differently than they respond to threats. Challenges activate focus, strategy, and performance. Threats activate panic, reactivity, and tunnel vision. Walk into every provocation like an athlete walking into competition. Head up, breathing controlled. Strategy clear, not hoping it won't happen, expecting it, prepared for it, ready to prove something to yourself. Because every time you pass that test, you don't just get through it, you grow from it. and you carry that growth into every confrontation that follows. Rule 6. Your breath is your anchor. Use it. This will sound too simple. It is not too simple. It is the most immediately accessible tool you have, and most people never use it. When you are being provoked, your body is already in the fight before your mind has made any decision. Jaw locked, chest tight, breathing fast and shallow, shoulders rising toward your ears. Every physiological signal your body can send is screaming one message: escalate. Here is what you do instead. Breathe deliberately. One long, slow, controlled exhale. Not a sigh of defeat. A breath of command. The act of consciously extending your exhale activates the vagus nerve and triggers your parasympathetic nervous system. Your heart rate begins to drop. Cortisol starts to clear. The tunnel narrows back to peripheral vision. Your prefrontal cortex comes back online. This is not metaphor. This is neuroscience. And the Stoics knew it, not in those terms, but in practice. The consistent Stoic instruction to pause, to observe, to return attention to one's inner state before responding. This is breath work, described philosophically. Epictetus spoke of Prosoche, watchful self-attention, as the foundation of all Stoic practice. You cannot watch yourself if you are swept away. The breath is what keeps you on the bank instead of in the current. Here is the specific technique. When provoked, inhale for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 6. That extended exhale is the key. It is the physiological signal to your nervous system that the threat has passed, that you are safe, that you are in control. Do this once before you respond to anything that raises your temperature. Just once. You will be stunned at how different the words are that come out of your mouth, or how easily you decide that no words need to come out at all. Your breath is always there. It is always available. It costs nothing. And in the right moment, it is the most powerful thing you can reach for. Rule 7. Your mind is a fortress. Start defending it like one. Marcus Aurelius returned to one image more than any other in his meditations: the inner citadel. The mind as an impenetrable stronghold. Not impenetrable because no one ever attacks it, but impenetrable because the inhabitant has made it so through deliberate, disciplined, consistent practice. Here is the truth that should electrify you. External hostility, on its own, has zero power over your interior state. Zero. It cannot reach inside you. It cannot touch your peace, your self-concept, your emotional stability, your sense of purpose. It can only do any of those things if you open a door and invite it in. Every insult requires your consent to wound you. Every dismissal needs your agreement to diminish you. Every attempt to rattle you depends entirely on your willingness to be rattled. Remove the consent. Withdraw the agreement. Refuse the willingness. And suddenly the attack has nowhere to land. This is what it means to have an inner citadel, not walls built out of emotional distance or numbness. That is not strength, that is avoidance. Real walls built from self-knowledge, clarity of values, and the practiced refusal to let external chaos define internal reality. Epictetus was stripped of almost every external possession and freedom a person can have. And yet, he wrote with more authority on inner freedom than almost anyone in history. Because he had done the work, he had built the citadel, and from inside it, no master, no circumstance, no provocation could reach him. You have that same capacity. The citadel is not built with money or status or the approval of others. It is built with every small act of self-governance Every time you chose your response over your reaction, your values over your impulse, your long-term reputation over your short-term satisfaction. Start now. Build one brick at a time, and stop leaving the door open for people who were never invited inside. Rule 8. Revenge is beneath you. Rising is not. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that I want you to sit with. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Not to beat them, not to expose them, not to let your success be the slow, satisfying proof that they were wrong. Those things all still center the other person. They still make your choices a reaction to theirs. The real move, the deepest, most complete form of transcendence, is simply to become so fundamentally different from the person who hurt you that the comparison itself becomes absurd. Think about what retaliation actually does to you. When you respond to cruelty with cruelty, what are you building? When you match pettiness with pettiness, aggression with aggression, venom with venom, who does that serve? You have descended. You have joined them on the floor they were already occupying. And now you are both down there, and you have wasted the one irreplaceable thing you had. The high ground. The Stoics were not pacifists. They were not asking you to be passive or to tolerate ongoing harm without consequence. They were asking you something much harder: to make sure that your response is always a product of your values, not a mirror of someone else's behavior. Because here is the fire in this principle. Every time you refuse to retaliate in kind, you are not losing. You are choosing. You are making the active, deliberate decision to be a specific kind of person. A person who does not scatter poison just because someone scattered it on them. A person whose character is not dictated by the worst behavior of others. That choice, made consistently over time, in real confrontations with real stakes. That is how you build a reputation that cannot be touched. That is how you build a self that no one can take from you. Not by being perfect, but by being relentlessly committed to something higher than reaction. Be unlike them. That's the whole game. Rule 9. Bulletproof your self-worth. From the inside. Here's the brutal question you need to answer honestly. Why does it hurt when they say it? Not every insult lands the same way. Some roll off you completely. Others seem to find a crack you didn't know was there and push straight through to something raw and tender. Why? What's the difference? The difference is almost always this. The insults that hurt most are the ones that touch an insecurity you already carry. They are not creating a wound. They are finding one that already existed. And that is information. Uncomfortable, important, actionable information. The Stoics were completely unsentimental about this. Seneca wrote that the person who is easily offended has, within themselves, something that requires defense. The offense is a symptom. The underlying insecurity is the condition. This is not blame, it is agency. Because if the wound is internal, that means the healing is also internal. You don't need the person who provoked you to apologize or take it back. You need to do the deeper work of examining where the vulnerability lives, why it's there, and what it would take to genuinely outgrow it. Real self-worth, the kind that doesn't require constant external reinforcement, is built from the inside. It is grounded not in what other people think of you, but in your own honest assessment of whether you are living in alignment with your values. When that alignment is solid, criticism slides off. Not because you're defensive, but because you have your own measure. And someone else's opinion, no matter how loudly or viciously delivered, does not override your own clear-eyed self-knowledge. Build that. Do the actual interior work. Identify the insecurities. Trace them to their origins. Decide, consciously, deliberately, what you actually believe about yourself. And then root yourself in that belief so deeply that the opinions of people who don't know you can't reach it. Because here is the ultimate truth. No one can make you feel small without your cooperation. Stop cooperating. Rule 10. Silence is a weapon. Learn to use it. Here is something the modern world has completely lost touch with. Silence is not the absence of a response. Silence is a response, often the most powerful one available. We are conditioned by social media, by confrontation culture, by the spectacle of public discourse, to believe that if someone attacks you and you don't respond, you have been beaten. That silence means you had nothing to say, that it means submission. The Stoics would say the opposite is true, and I think if you think about it with any depth, you'll see they're right. When someone provokes you and you respond, even brilliantly, you have confirmed that their words had enough weight to compel your attention, your energy, your words. You have validated their tactic. You have shown them the button works. But when you meet their aggression with unbroken silence and steady eyes, when they unload everything they have, and you simply look at them and say nothing, you have communicated the most withering thing imaginable. You are not significant enough to disturb me. That is not a subtle message. That lands hard. There is also the social physics of this that most people completely miss. In any public confrontation, silence does not fall neutrally. It falls on whoever created the awkwardness. If someone attacks you and you say nothing, the discomfort of that silence doesn't belong to you. It belongs to them. They said something ugly. They escalated. They created the tension. And your silence is a spotlight that keeps that fact front and center, without you having to say a single word. Seneca wrote that the first test of wisdom is knowing which battles are beneath you. Not every provocation deserves a response. Not every insult merits an answer. Learning to distinguish the two, and choosing silence with confidence and clarity, is one of the most sophisticated skills a person can develop. Practice it. Start saying less. Start letting more things go unanswered. Start discovering how much power lives in the space where your reaction used to be. Rule 11. Stop taking bait. Start taking notes. Let me give you a reframe that will fundamentally change your relationship with conflict. Right now, when someone attacks you, your brain processes it as a personal offense. Something directed at you, designed to harm you, demanding a defensive response. And from that processing, everything goes sideways. The ego activates, the emotions flood, and rationality exits the building. New frame. Every provocation is a training session. The Stoics were completely serious about this. They didn't see difficulty as an interruption to the philosophical life. They saw it as the substance of the philosophical life. The virtues, courage, temperance, justice, wisdom, are not abstract ideals. They are capacities that can only be developed in the heat of actual experience. Temperance doesn't mean anything in a comfortable room with no one challenging you. It means something when someone is in your face, deliberately trying to make you lose control, and you maintain your center anyway. That is a real test. That is real data. That is your character revealing itself under conditions that actually matter. So when someone comes for you, when they take their shot, land their cheap blow, try to bait you into a reaction that will make you look small, stop processing it as an attack and start processing it as an examination. What virtue is being tested here? How am I performing? Is my response going to represent the person I am trying to become? And then, audit it afterward. What landed? Why? What insecurity was successfully targeted? What does that tell you about the interior work still to be done? Where did you hold your composure well, and where did you feel the cracks? This is not navel-gazing. This is the most practical form of self-development available to you. Because every confrontation you debrief honestly is one that makes you less vulnerable in the next one. Stop being a target. Start being a student. The provocateur has no idea they're doing you a favor. But you do. Rule 12, they're a storm. You don't negotiate with weather. This is the rule that, when it fully lands, makes everything else easier. The provocateurs in your life, the aggressive colleague, the hostile family member, the person online who seems to have made your suffering their part-time hobby. Most of them are not acting from freedom. They are acting from compulsion. They are being driven by anger they haven't processed, insecurities they haven't faced, pain they haven't acknowledged. They don't fully know why they do it. They couldn't stop if they tried. Marcus Aurelius came back to this again and again. He asked himself to see the difficult people in his life the way a physicist sees weather, not as moral agents who had chosen, freely and deliberately, to make his life difficult, but as natural phenomena, moving according to their own internal pressures, indifferent to the inconvenience they caused. A storm doesn't know it is a storm. It doesn't intend to soak you. It is just doing what it does. And you don't rage at a storm. You don't try to reason with a storm. You don't lie awake at night rehearsing arguments against a storm. You see it coming, you prepare appropriately, and you let it pass. This is what radical depersonalization looks like in practice. It is the ability to observe someone's aggression without absorbing it, to watch them perform their anger or their cruelty or their spite without becoming a co-performer in the drama. And here is the depth of this principle that most people never reach. It is actually an act of compassion. When you can see past someone's hostility to the suffering that drives it, when you can recognize a storm for what it is, instead of taking it personally, you are extending a form of understanding to them that almost no one in their life is offering. You are seeing them clearly, possibly more clearly than they see themselves. That doesn't mean you stand in the rain. Set whatever limits are necessary. Remove yourself if needed. But do it from a place of clarity rather than reactivity, from understanding rather than injury, from sovereignty rather than survival. Because the person who has been soaked by 1,000 storms and learned not to curse the rain, that person has reached something. A steadiness, a depth, a calm that is genuinely unmovable. That is what we're building here. That is what the Stoics were building for 2,000 years. That is what you are becoming. Let me leave you with this. 12 rules. But really, when you strip it all the way down, one principle. One truth that the Stoics kept returning to in every way they could think to say it. You are not what happens to you. You are how you respond. Other people's provocations, their hostility, their attempts to make you small or reactive or defensive. Those are the weather. You are not the weather. You are the person standing in it, deciding what to feel, deciding what to do, deciding who to be in the middle of it. When you see attacks as confessions rather than verdicts, you stop being wounded by them. When you stop accepting packages that were never meant for you, you stop being weighed down by them. When you guard your reactive impulse with a 3-second pause, you stop being controlled by them. When you build your self-worth from the inside out, when you construct your inner citadel brick by brick, when you choose to rise instead of retaliate, you become something the provocateur never anticipated, someone they simply cannot reach. That is the promise of Stoic philosophy. Not a life without difficulty, there is no such life, but a self that cannot be diminished by difficulty. A core so solid, so deliberately constructed, so deeply inhabited, that every storm that passes through you leaves you not weaker, but more sure of who you are. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth while navigating betrayal, plague, war, and personal grief. Epictetus built one of the most enduring philosophies in human history while legally owning nothing, not even his own body. Seneca faced exile, political persecution, and ultimately a forced death sentence, and wrote with more composure and clarity than most people find in the easiest of lives. They were not superhuman. They were trained. They built something inside themselves deliberately, over time, through practice, and no external force could touch it. You can build the same thing, starting now, starting with the next person who tries you. Let them try. If this video hit you somewhere real, share it. Someone in your life needs this today. Drop a comment and tell me which of these 12 rules is the one you're going to carry with you. And subscribe, because this is just one piece of what we're building here. Stay unshakable. The world needs people who can't be broken. See you in the next one.